It's April 4th, 4:31, and for the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Policy Drafting Committee.
I guess I have to do something first, right? Reorganization?
Yes,
Sorry.
that's right. And I mean, I could go over the agenda, but then you can do reorganization because that's going to be first, unless you want to do that.
Why don't we get a chair elected? So this time I'll accept nominations for a chair for the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Policy Drafting Committee.
Nominate Leon Johnson.
Any second to nominate Leon Johnson? Someone's going to need to unmute there. Nicole, thank you, Nicole. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of Leon Johnson, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed to Leon Johnson? Are there any abstentions? Leon, congratulations. The meeting is yours.
Thank you. I'll try to do it. I mean, before we go over the agenda, we need to add a vice chair.
Nominate Nicole Whalen.
No nomination for vice chair, Nicole Whalen. We get a second from anyone out there. If not, I'll do it.
I'll second.
Okay.
Karen.
And Karen said, okay, it's been moved and second. Are any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. Just have a affirmative vote for Nicole Whalen as the vice chair of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes all have it. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over the agenda here tonight. We're operating by Zoom and in present. We just completed reorganization. The next item will be public comments. We have minutes from February 7th. We have policy prevention of sexual harassment for 5003. We have interrogation search procedure 5090. And we have threat and disruption of school operations 5087, the tracking sheet, and future considerations out here for equity policy related pieces. And the next meeting is scheduled for May the 2nd. At this time, that is the agenda that we'll be following tonight with a certain amount of time put toward it. Unless there is some constraints from someone else that maybe want to change the arrangement of this, or we'll just go with it as is. So are there any objections to the agenda as read?
I make a suggestion that if Dina Atwood is here to speak on anything particular, that we get her in the mix early.
She is in the mix for policy, the fifth one on here, 5090, which is the bulk of the time for tonight. And the rest of them shouldn't take a lot of time. And we'll be right to Dina. Is that okay? Is that all right, Dana? Yes, she nodded.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, then I'll move as swiftly as possible. Public comments. Are there any public comments for this board? None so far. Okay, we have none. Minutes from February 7th. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at those. Preparation of the minutes. Move to approve the minutes from February 7th. You got a second? I'll second it then. Leon can do that. Yes. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, we have a confirmation vote. That all in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say by aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain?
I wasn't present.
Nicole abstained. She wasn't present. Okay, thank you. The next item on here was for 5003, prevention of sexual harassment as prohibited by Title IX. We were moving this on, and the reason this is back here, and then we just learned yesterday, Jackie Kelly, who likes to check all the references in all of the documents, didn't get a chance to complete that before we brought it before the board last time. And then she sent us an email and said she's going to be out of town tonight. And I asked her if she had any comments that she can forward those on to us. And so I didn't get any comments from anybody. Did anyone else receive any comments concerning the movement of this policy as recommended by the School Board Association? I don't hear any, I don't see any. So we'll proceed with this policy as is. And as I mentioned to Jackie, that if for some reason, as always, if somebody finds something that we need to make a correction or a change once the policy is in the process and has been moved right through, we can always bring it up or come back if it wants that.
So does this go to SVSU to warn?
That would be going to SVSU according to our tracking sheets. I think it is, well, no, it won't go to the, it's got a Mount Anthony didn't get a chance
We
to,
read it, I'm sorry.
yeah. So we got a couple places out there to.
That was the issue with it not being on the website.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Okay, well, we'll move this on as fast as we can. While the SVSU meeting, or Mount Anthony meeting will be before the SVSU meeting, not the one or the other. We're moving on.
It'll be the 20th, April 20th. No,
No, 27th.
27th. Yep, got moved. Yep.
Did MAU get moved or SVSU?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
they're
all
both
right.
gonna be the same night, one at 5, one at 6:30.
Okay, very good. Yay.
Okay, the next item up is policy 5090, interrogation and search and siege of students by law enforcement and other agencies. Is up for discussion. As you know, for several months, we've asked and we've talked about this policy, and we've asked our legal source and Dana to review this particular policy and come back with comments based on all of the things that we had talked about, raised some questions or scenarios about. So she's here tonight, and I want to thank you for filling in here by Zoom. It's a wonderful thing. And thank you for the additions and the changes that you've already made. And I'll be open for discussion for this policy right now. You on board, Dana?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa, can you scroll down a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Tell me when
So-
to stop.
Okay, go up a little. So the first paragraph I put in was sort of an introductory paragraph. I think that school districts, not surprisingly, do a balance of trying to have an environment which, in a sense, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it is sort of got a protective bubble around it for students while they're there. But there's also the issue of cooperating with law enforcement and the Department for Children and Families. So the first paragraph is sort of trying to identify that. I think that there's a space there for having more in there if the board is so inclined to do so. In terms of, there are pretty strong feelings, I think, from members of the community, members from the board who are members of the community about issues of disparity in treatment of individuals. I think you have your non-discrimination document, which all of your administrators and all of the boards approved. I didn't put that in there because that would be my words and not your words. I think if that's a place or a driving need that you all believe should be there, it seems to me it should be your words and not my words there. So that's the first paragraph. You do have a responsibility in the sense that you can't close your doors to law enforcement coming in. You can't 100% close your doors to law enforcement coming in, but you want to balance out, at least as I understood, the disruption of the educational environment by having law enforcement come in and interrogate, which is the terminology used in the policy, or interviewing students on your grounds when it's not school related. And also, in generally speaking, whether or not it's appropriate for them to be there. I think we talked about at one point in time, the Department for Children and Families, in terms of having interviews of students when there's issues of abuse and neglect. Their policy manual actually identifies going in and talking to students within the educational environment during the school day as being one of the preferred methods of doing so. And part of that is because you provide and you endeavor to provide a very safe and supportive environment for kids. All of them, whether it's law enforcement or non-school government officials, and that's more than the Department for Children and Families, need to have a legal basis to come in and interrogate students. It has to, for police officers, there are issues of probable cause if they're doing searches and those things. One of the things I wanted to add in there in the second paragraph in number 2 is when law enforcement or the other authorities arrive, to make it clear that the building administrator needs to understand that, that they're there. It is also to try and not intersperse non-educational issues during the educational day. So to limit the disruption of the learning environment, taking the position that such interviews should take place outside of the school day if possible. Number 3 is making it clear that there is a limited exception to the fact that a police officer or another governmental official other than your school personnel need to have the knowledge and the permission of the parent or guardian. The one exception is in cases of child abuse, suspected child abuse or neglect, which is that if the parent or guardian is the suspected abuser or individual perpetrating the neglect, they don't get to be told. Another limitation on that is obviously if you have emergency or imminent potential danger to life or property, but the person making that decision is your building administrator. And it still requires that reasonable efforts to notify the student's parents before they can, in fact, talk to them in those cases. You do have some students who are over the age of 18 and therefore have the right to make and are not under guardianship orders, and therefore they have the right to give permission or not prior to being interviewed. That's number 4. Number 5 is to have that these should not be done, the high school has that great lobby, these discussions or interrogations should not be done in the lobby where people walking by can see it, but they instead should be done in private with the principal and I apologize, that should say their designee if we're going to use appropriate gender pronouns. Number 6 is identifying school employees are not the agents of law enforcement officials. We talked about this with search and seizure. In order for a search to be done by school employees, there has to be a reasonable suspicion. In order for a search to be done by law enforcement, there has to be probable cause. Those are two very different standards. And so either the police either need to have a warrant or the other legal basis would be that they had probable cause. I wasn't sure why the interrogation definition was in there. We can discuss if you think it needs to be done, but that's a little bit broad in the sense that I would say that the interrogation that you're talking about in this policy is being done by law enforcement or other non-school officials. Lisa, can you scroll down? And this is, I just basically made changes. I think I made changes in number 7. The policy also extended out to who a student would be released into the custody of. And I added sometimes children, Department of Children and Families, I think it's actually for children and families, / their child protective services. They have legal authority where they can take children if they need to. But again, that the parents need to be notified of the action. I did make school officials responsible for it. It's your policy and it's your grounds, with the exception of whether or not, in cases where the suspected abuse or neglect is where we think the parents or guardians have alleged to have committed those acts. I think that's it, Lisa. I think the next part is just, right?
Yeah. So, thank you, Nina, for highlighting that way. I wanted to ask, I'll take the first crack at it here. The initial statement on the sheet about the board of the SVSU supervisor unions commit to providing a safe and supported learning environment. And I think that's a good statement, but it needs to come and follow that it is the policy of the directors of the Southwest Vermont Supervisor Union. And that would be the first thing I would be wanting to do is move that, arrange that. I don't know what anybody else have any thoughts about having that statement format and become the second still before the initial. Any comments concerning that? From the board
Same
members?
information is there. It's
It's the same information, we're just gonna move it.
To where?
Following, it is the policy of the directors of the Southwest, and then there'll be Sandgate and school districts that and may have to take that.
Okay.
School districts.
So you state the policy and then
Let me
state
do
the
this.
Right, we state the
philosophy.
philosophy behind that. But I was just saying, when it came in with the school district that on that the debt leads in the students may not be interrogated and so forth along that line. How do we want to handle that part of that? Once we move and put that in there, you got to do something with that. Is that correct? Or maybe not.
I mean, I think you can move it. I can tell you why I had it. And quite frankly, Leon, either way, from a legal perspective is fine, I guess. I had bifurcated it out because I have a very sort of role-related narrow view of policy and underlying philosophy. I think it's fine to have it where Lisa has put it. I tend to separate them out. I don't necessarily believe that you have to separate out what your underlying philosophical rationale is for your policy. I will point out the paragraph that you moved is the one, and just giving feedback from coming from what I heard the last time we talked about this, that I anticipated that perhaps you all would be expanding that.
Right. So we'll move that in that manner, and we'll go from there. If no one has any objections to that, and then we'll see how I read it. Again, when it comes back, we're going to send it through to the regular, all of the boards and so forth. And if they have any problem and be confused along that line, we'll still be able to come back and make changes. But I thought the flow in that manner may make a difference. And so it's true that we have a lot of considerations going around this, because the philosophy behind it is that the kids from K through 12 or 13 is in school environment, and that environment should do everything it can to educate and promote a well-being of a student before it gets involved with law enforcement. And we abide by the family court in terms of a Department of Child and Family. So that's how we wanted to do the policy. I'm going to skip right down to item 6, and I still have 6 where the statement, it comes out in the front, and when people read this and so forth, school employees are not agents of law enforcement officers. And the reason I'm saying this, when the administrator or the parent or whatever looks at that, the first thing they think about is, I'm stepping back because I got no responsibility there. I know, and we're strongly saying search or seizure by law enforcement officers on the school property may occur when a warrant and other legal basis exists authorizing such seizure. But I don't know what to do with that first part, because I want to make, it's true, but I wanted to make sure that this didn't deter individuals for trying to make sure they do all the things that they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to bagging off and immediately trying to contact law enforcement. So I don't know how to manage that way, because that's not what we want to have, is law enforcement be the first thing to happen when it's a lot of things within the education environment should be taking place.
So that is a great point, Leon. So how I wrote number 6 in the first sentence is that, talk about, different perspectives. I was writing it in the sense of I was more focused on, because I told you there's that reasonable suspicion, which is a lower standard that school officials need to have, versus probable cause, which is what law enforcement needs. And that's also what supports going and requesting a warrant from a judge. And that's a higher standard. And what I was trying to do in a very short sentence is something that I think comes out more when I do the administrators retreat and talk to administrators about these questions, is that it is highly inappropriate for law enforcement to turn to one of your school employees and say, hey, you go do that search. And there's a whole host of case law that talks about how that's not going to be upheld. And that's a problem, right? Because you have two standards. And that's what I was talking about. Maybe it's a little too legalese, right? By saying not the agents of law enforcement. did not even view that sentence, obviously, in sort of my legal, with the blinders on view, that could be construed as saying, hey, it's not my problem as a school employee, let me call law enforcement. I think there may be a way to do it. I would want all of your input on that, is that, whether it's school employees or not, the agents of law enforcement officials for doing searches based on, or something, right?
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Leon, because like I said, was very much from, I think, a role perspective, more concerned with a basis of saying, if you come into our building, a law enforcement official, don't look to us to do your work for you, in the sense of, don't make it because you don't think you have probable cause, ask us to then do the search or the seizure. That's a problem, right? It's a
Right.
problem on a whole host of levels, but it's definitely a problem on sustaining the search or the seizure if you're looking at it from a law enforcement perspective. But it also is a problem of, there has to be a clear-cut division between the role of law enforcement, the limited role of law enforcement coming into your schools, as well as what your school employees do with their own duties and responsibility for maintaining a safe learning environment.
Can you say school employees may not be used as agents of law enforcement officials? Does that change any of that?
Did you hear what Dick was saying?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Dick, I think that's definitely more on point than what I wrote. And you know me, I don't really have any ego about what I wrote. Hey, at least I hope I don't have any ego about it.
School employees may not be used as agents of the law enforcement, agents of law enforcement office.
I mean, well, let me ask you all this. So as feedback for me, since I don't think any of you are attorneys, does that make sense? And is that clear about what I was talking about? Does that address the concern I had?
Anyone else want to comment that's online concerning that?
Dick, did you say may not be used as agents? Is that what you said that you're? Of law
Yeah,
enforcement?
I think they're incorporated into the policy in other places as having to be aware and be present and those kind of things, but can't be considered the agent. So a law enforcement person, yeah, that's sort of what I was going for. I don't know if it does that.
I hear you.
You could also put after, in the next sentence, after on school property may only occur when a warrant or other legal basis. Add the word only between may and occur. You're almost there. Nope. After on school.
Officials on school property.
Keep going to the right. Nope.
Oh, after property.
Yep. You see
Oh.
may. Just
Right.
put only between may and occur.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's a little hard to, and I probably should have said what.
It's going.
It's going good.
That's okay, but this is good. If you were able to get it live. Okay. So how does that read to everybody now?
I will get that hyphen out there.
Again, this is now reading that school employees may not be used as agents of law enforcement officers. Okay, and that takes a little of the heat. It softens it a lot. And search and seizure by law enforcement officers on school property may only occur when a warrant or legal basis exists authorizing such seizure, such and seizure. That, I think, is, to me, is a better way of saying it, to let the people that are going to be out to enforce this understand what we're trying to do when it involves kids in the educational environment. We want you to do everything out here, but it's still the consequences is that may come around, that certain things that you won't be able to do, but we're not highlighting those. When law enforcement come in, they'll spell those things out and get the approval to go ahead. It's the way I look at that. So I think this is what we ought to be looking for in that statement. Anyone else out there? We have a couple more board members and administrators that want to say anything about that.
I have a question just about, I hate to do this, but about the history of this policy and how it fits in with 5085. Because any changes that you're making here are also, I mean, the lines that you're just talking about right now, those are also in 5085 that's posted on the school's website for search and seizure. So did 5090 come about because 5085 didn't cover enough? I've not been involved in this enough to know. I can't find any model policy from the VSBA or any other resource to give guidelines on how search, seizure, and interrogation are tied together as a single policy, or if they should be separate policies. But I guess fundamentally, whatever changes you're making right now in 5090, that same language currently exists in 5085. So I guess it's intentional that they're two different policies. I don't understand how it became two. I haven't been involved long enough to know that, but.
Lisa, can you scroll down for a sec to where it talks about when it was put in?
It referenced of 5085. Now, it almost appears as if 5085 would have been the administrative regs piece.
5085 has language that says school employees are not agents of law enforcement officials. Search and seizure by law enforcement officials on school property, including searches. I mean, it has the same language, at least in part. It certainly doesn't cover everything.
Line 52 on the inside of that policy is, and that would have to be corrected along that line that we're talking about now. But the basics, I mean, when we look at both 5085 and I didn't read all the details in it, but it's outlining more of the specific things that would take place in the process once we come to search and seizure.
I suspect, and please don't hold my feet to the fire on this one, Nicole, but I suspect that there were two policies back in the early 2000s, especially when it talks about former policy F5. So I suspect there are historical policies having them split.
Yeah.
Right. So it may be at this point in time, one could follow the other one as administrative regs if we wanted to take that up and have that resolve that policy and have it be part of 5090, but those things fall under the category of the details for administrative regs.
I mean, I can also just historically say around the mid 2000, so 2009, 2010, there was, and I think I've referenced this before, there was a shift of going less is more in terms of model policies being pushed out by VSBA. And the fact that these all are before that time frame. This one is from before that time frame originally.
The thing that I keep picking up in 5085 is loaned property. I mean, they talk about computers that,
Yeah.
that reference is in there in a lot of places, and it occurs to me that that has to do with lockers, technology equipment, and that kind of stuff, which really isn't referenced in the interrogation, I don't think.
Right, not to this level of detail, and I think, hey, if we really wanted to do 5090 is the policy, and then we review all of 5085, and as it could becomes the administrative regs to this policy.
The only other thing I would also say in response is I would be cautious, and I think part of why I sort of was driven to be in there besides the title of this policy is that I don't necessarily think that in an interrogation of a student by law enforcement that we can foreclose the possibility that there would be also a search and seizure that occurs.
That's true.
And
we're still saying that can happen, but we soften the philosophy behind it, and then saying that we want to do that. We need to do everything we can within our environment to do that. But when it happens, we need to have a warrant and other things that needs to take place. And so I'm just looking over 5085 real quick, and I'm saying, okay, this gives a little bit more specifics for everything that needed to be in an administrative regs as opposed to
Well, they are
policy.
different, right? I think to Dick's point, 5085 is mostly about search and seizure of school property and sort of what the boundaries are and what the process is. And 5090 is specifically sort of outlining the structure around interrogation. My only point is that you have some repetition in language between the two. And if we're going to change language in 5090, we just need to make note of going back and changing so that we're consistent in language, specifically in number 6 under 5085, because that's the only place where it really makes any reference to an interrogation policy. So whatever changes we're making in 5090, somebody needs to make note of making sure that we go back into 5085 and make that language consistent.
Right, and 5085 could be put right on the agenda for next time to do that.
Yeah.
In terms of follow-up to this particular policy.
Yeah, I just wasn't, I guess my reason for asking about the history, I just wasn't sure how 5090 came about, but there was obviously some reason for it being a completely separate policy at some point in time.
Dick had pointed out loan property. I mean, we got into the fact that we started to do all of those things, that the loan property keep popping up, and what rights people have to do that. So I think we need to just take another whole look at this policy, 5085, to see how it would stand our search and seizure as it relates to loan property.
Maybe you don't even call it search and seizure, you change the topic. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that we're talking about being able to search school property in all these cases in 5085, I think, and
Right.
maybe that just sounds too aggressive. I don't know.
So, hearing
I'm
that,
gonna be looking at 5085 for next time and making sure that the language is
Sounds it,
consistent.
Dana.
Okay.
Right,
I'm
right,
I'm making notes. I'm making sure the language is consistent, bare minimum in number 6, but to
right,
take a look at the whole policy. Okay.
and whether we want to change the name or anything along that line. I mean, the search and seizure is what it is, but
Right.
we're dealing a lot with the property, loan property or property of the school or so forth along that line. And letting individuals know that in terms of, if I wanted to be the administrator, I would be reading this and say, oh, this is what I can do. This is what you shouldn't be doing, more so than in 5090.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why I
50,
said administrator rig.
yeah, I 5090 is, and I apologize, I haven't looked at 5085 in quite some time, but 5090 is directly towards students. The issue of having a policy, I'll just generally put out, one of the reasons why you would have a policy about search and seizure of property, it has come up in the past.
Right.
Misuse of computer equipment, us being able to say to law enforcement in investigations of misconduct by personnel, putting people on notice, you know, the overall of that, this is not their computer. What they do on it, we can see. But I'll look at 5085 for your next meeting.
Shall I email that to you tomorrow, Dina?
Yes, please. Can you email
Yeah.
Susan in my
Yeah.
office too and tell her the date of the meeting?
Absolutely.
I think
Thank you.
that's what we need to do. Thanks, Nicole, for pulling that out there. Because we hadn't added that on together with this one. I don't think I did.
I have one question, Leah.
Yes.
The paragraph that we moved, rather than the words the boards, should we put in there the member districts?
That would be an appropriate
Yes.
thing for me in terms of amendment districts. Still at the board in the second paragraph now. That won't change the meaning of it and actually make it more appropriate.
I know that's the language we've used before.
Also in the second sentence. It's on 14.
It was in,
Oh, yep.
yes, it's
Got
on,
it. Mhm.
okay.
The interesting thing, Leon, and I apologize to all of you about this, but you all are very indulgent for letting me have input. I'm wondering if you want to move number 6 to number 2, or if you think that having number 6 at the bottom.
Well, I thought maybe, actually, when law enforcement and other authorities arrive at the school.
The one that we just changed,
So, yeah, that could be because.
or put it as number 1 and then start off with all of the stuff about the interrogation in number 2.
That sounds good.
I like
Yeah.
that suggestion better. We're right up top.
Yeah, I think so. Now we look at it again. 6 needed to be in the space of 1, and then it moves on from
And
there.
then everything else we'll then talk about.
Yeah,
Sorry. And
I'll
Lisa,
straighten all the numbers out.
I truly apologize publicly for how bad I messed up the formatting.
Oh, no, it's
No.
fine. I'll take care of all the numbers afterwards.
yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to do that. Well, that's a lot of progress in this particular piece here. So for the time being, we'll still leave the reference of 5085 on here until we get a chance to go through 5085. And so what do we want to do now with this policy in this format? Do we want to go out to be 5090 and go and look for other and additional information from the other districts and community or whatever in this formal process? Does that sound good to everyone? to continue on with the warning process and look for feedback so we can have more discussion or no discussion. Is that okay? Hearing
That's
none?
good.
Okay.
No comment is a good comment.
No comment is a good comment. I don't know. Let's see here. The next item on here is 5087 is another policy related to the school operations, and to have it up for discussion. There was some strong things that we really wanted to bring out into this particular policy, and it was separated out because of the wanted a quick response and to be effective in any situations that may occur when it comes to threats that involve harmful to the school or school personnel and so forth along that line. And so this policy spells out things on a bigger level, a larger level, dealing with bombs or threats that will affect the outcome of it, that would affect the whole school environment, because if it was true, it would have a devastating effect if we didn't take action. And so that's why this policy is out here saying that we take this very serious in terms of.
Can we dismiss Dina? Do we need her for this?
No, we can just discuss it. We don't have to have Dina for this one.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you all.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Dina.
Yeah,
It's always nice to see you all.
yep. So we added this on for the start of the discussion here to see what it is, and I just wanted to highlight the fact as to why this policy is so important to us, because at this day and time, we've had a lot of things, and it's been around for a while, but we had a lot to talk about when it comes to communication that within the school environment that may affect the whole school with a threat or host or a real threat. And so this policy deals with that and try to spell out what it is that we need to be trying to do, and make sure that students and staff alike understand the essence of the policy and the environment that we have in terms of the school.
And I believe this is a required policy under federal guidelines, but
So
should have had Dina stay on a minute longer.
we can
Well, I
still
can-
ask that. This is a
I can
discussion
look at it
today.
on the BSBA.
So that's what we had. I wanted to open up the discussion for this today. I don't know who wants to take a crack. Do you have anything else? Anybody online wants to talk about this policy?
Sorry.
Other than what I just talked about, it spells out a lot. So if not, then we'll still have an opportunity to have some more discussion on this.
Are those references in, the Toxic Substances Control Act and the Materials Transportation Act and all that stuff? Are they still?
Yeah. That's why I think this comes from federal guidance, so
Yeah.
we'll need to
So the same reference then?
verify this.
You can carry on the law a certain amount of fines or prison sentences. Is that what you're talking about? At the end.
There was regulations referenced, USC and Hazardous Material Act.
Number 3.
Oh, Yes, number 3.
Oh, sorry.
And that would be one of the things that Jackie would want to look at and help verify all of those things. So we'll give that assignment to Jackie Kelly and anybody else that may want to attack those individual references along that line.
And the discipline area has to be consistent with expulsion and we've got another policy for that.
Right.
I'm almost positive the bond language comes from a federal document.
Okay.
Yep, unless they've changed, but that's what they all members of the school community are advised that academic time lost as well will be rescheduled either as on weekends and vacation days, dates, an extended long period of days and so forth along that line. There's no comment from anybody concerning any of those things. I don't hear anything. The other thing for that is that it gives some responsibilities to the superintendent specifically in here to develop a method of reviewing and discussing this policy with students and employees along that line at their staff meeting, at in the book, that the student handbook that every student get, have it noted in there. And I think that's exactly where it is. If you took your handbook for the student handbook, you'll see that. Is there anything else out there? If not, we can still bring this back because we have a few things. Next meeting, policy meeting, 1 is the notation about required policy. 2 is to make sure the references are all still active and current. And for item number 3. And if not, then we'll be able to move on with this particular policy as an update or review.
I think there's other little language, just little language, updated language things. I'm just noticing like, so I think it's just good to review it.
Yep. So how about this being ready for being on the agenda for next time? So if everybody have a chance to do it, or you want to send it out, have it done. If Laura said maybe, well, we have those things. We wouldn't want to send it out. We got to answer these questions. So it'll be on the agenda for next time.
All right.
Okay, anything else associated with that? If not, we wanted to open a discussion with that, and that's what we did. The next item on the agenda was to look at the tracking sheet to make sure it helps us know where everything is. And we had.
Can we change the name
No.
of 5145? We got the
Oh,
policy
yeah,
number changed, but it
Yes.
keeps coming up this.
yep, I will change that.
What? 50?
5145.
Okay. On the tracking sheet, and again, for everybody out here, we don't have the new people that are supposed to be coming to the board out here, but it helps us to know where all of the policies have been and when the boards have had a chance to look at them, to warn them and approve them before the final step of SVSU. And so down for 50,003, you can see that Mount Anthony was lacking in having everything ready in this last meeting, so we didn't have a chance to do a vote on that. And so that left that up open in there, and that just let everybody know where the policies are in terms of the circulation process.
Lisa,
Yes,
do you have this beyond this is the list of things that are currently under review. Do you have this? Is this a subset of a larger spreadsheet that shows all of the policies?
no, this is strictly what the policy committee's looking at the moment.
Okay. Because we're still trying to, and I think Bill's still on the call, because we are still trying to make sure that we have a cadence for warning and adopting. We've done all the required policies and now we're working our way through the recommended policies. I just want to make sure that we have a way to track what Arlington and Sandgate have done and what still is yet to be done.
That should be on this sheet, and that's what you'll be looking at, and that's why we call it the tracking sheet. So I think the last time we met, Sandgate hadn't had an opportunity to meet, using that as an example. And then just recently, they did meet for 3:30 and got caught up. And remember, we said that they weren't going to be meeting every month, every 3 months or something. They were going to have a board meeting and so forth.
I still think it's been settled whether Sandgate is going to adopt. They said they would want it to keep the process going, but they stated they're uncomfortable adopting anything beyond required policies. So I did go back. I see in the February notes, we said we're going to clarify that with Dina on the
Right.
minutes, but I don't think we have. So like, you know, what happens if they continue with that? Our policy is not considered then fully approved.
Correct.
And so I was asking too, as well, who in the education department told them that they didn't have to abide by
They said the Vermont School Board Association.
the school board association, and I mean, that's a big name, and I hadn't heard that myself, and I'm asking that somebody notify them to make sure that the school board association notify us concerning that
I
effort.
can have Dina contact their attorney and
Yeah,
get
they-
clarification.
Right.
Yeah, it was,
Usually-
Leon, it was, I talked to Sue Kolowski of the VTSBA, and she was the one who gave the advice. They didn't want to adopt any policies. And they're going on, coincidentally, they're the next district that is similar to Sandgate is Winhall. So they're going based on what Winhall is doing.
So
That was Sue's recommendation.
yeah, we need to
I'll
follow. So Jim's gonna have Dina follow up with Sue as to that, the repercussions of that statement. I'm not in sync with that, and if the next time I'm on a board meeting with her, I'll also talk about that.
Did that answer Nicole's question, or was she looking at the larger?
I'm
She
She's
was
looking
trying-
at the big picture.
Yeah, I'm looking to make sure that of all of the policies for the SVSU, that we have a way to visually, not just visually, but we have a way to track.
All right. So Nicole, can I answer that question?
I would love that.
So we went through, so the board officially has gone through, we did that this summer and did all the required policies of the SVSU. So we did all
Right.
those, and then
Yep.
remember that big list, I think it was September
Yep.
meeting I brought them to?
Yep.
Then we've done all, like, whatever policy they've worn since then. You know,
Right.
because we've been on that, we've done that, but I think there's still work to go back through and determine recommended and, I forget the other category, it wasn't optional, but it was recommended and policies to consider.
Right,
So we have not done the policies to consider or the recommended policies yet.
okay,
And so it'll be sort of like a twofold situation. If that was given out there, and as we still come back, now it's like for next month, saying what policies we want to bring up and put on the review in terms of saying we want to review those policies. If they didn't get caught in the original process of that list, then they'll get picked up. If we bring them up for discussion, they'll get done there. And I'm
Right.
saying there's trying not to put any pressure on any of the situations because, in terms of the paperwork, it's going to catch up. Is what I'm getting at. We made the conversion and saying SVSU, and we're saying we got all the policies out here, and whether everybody's had an opportunity to do all the things right up front, it's going to take some time to get all that straightened out. But they're in place. That's that. Okay.
Just one more comment, Nicole, because I think what we're doing is we're also confusing the Arlington's board work, is that the policy is one thing, but we call them procedures, and I know they call them administrative,
Administrative reg.
But we still have a lot of work to do around taking the SU policies and shaping those administrative regulations to the Arlington School District.
Right.
So, and that's what I'm saying. It's monumental. It's a big task. And so it's best we have an umbrella that managed them all. And now any of them that are concerned, we ask any and all to bring a list of numbers for our next policy meeting and say, okay, I got 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever I want to put on there. That's why we have down at the bottom of the list, we have future consideration. I should be having some futures and considerations from everybody that we want to get to and put them in the forelight.
To that end, are you tracking what changes the VSBA is making to what changes they have recently made to policies to make sure that we're current with what their recommended changes are?
They send a notification, yes, to administrators here, and they send the information to all of the board members as well, that Sue does, and it has that little piece it's a piece in there to talk about policy. I think it's some things that they were doing in terms of equity for the last thing, and something else that I saw, but every board member, and that's one of the things we wanted to get out. Just every board member has some responsibilities to take that information from the school board, the community, the administrators, whatever, and bring it in when it comes to policy so that we can look at it all. And we'll put it on the agenda and move forward with it.
Then I would ask that we look at the VSBA site for their new policies and recently changed policies to make sure that we are in sync with those.
Yes. Of all the new ones that I see Susan have on her, we bring them out. And I'm saying that there are certain individuals that responsibility, they send it to the administrative office in each SU, those particular recommended policies. And then they send it to every board member so we can get them and look at them. And so when I see them, I add them on to our agenda. Lisa and Laura, we add them on here and that's how we got the policy on about the, Title IX. That came right through that process. So there is a process that goes to multiple individuals to make sure it gets down to this level and get reviewed, adjusted, and entered into the system in a timely manner. Okay. That's all that I have for this particular time. We'll be looking to set an agenda for, with all the items that get sent to us, and we're saying that May 2nd is the next available date that we'll have a meeting. And I know that May 2nd is a problem for me, Nicole, and I won't be able to chair that meeting. So I'm going to make sure that I get up to the point and prepare and look at the agenda. And then you'll be able to do that either in person or by Zoom,
Okay,
okay? If you're going to be here. So she said, okay, so,
Sounded like a yes to me.
oh, yes, thank you. It's in the real heart of the activity for me these next 2 months. Okay, I don't have anything else tonight to do that, and so we can, as for a motion to adjourn,
So
Dick moved, somebody second,
I'll second.
Nicole second. All in favor? So aye.
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 Okay. Thank you all for attending.